The number one thing that triggers avoidant fears is something that signifies that the relationship is real, that the commitment is real. Everything was going wonderfully. It was perfect. You felt like you met your twin flame. The relationship was progressing wonderfully. You may have just had a wonderful holiday together. You may have had a dream vacation. You may have just gone ring shopping. You may have introduced to family and friends, and everything could not be more perfect. And then suddenly, the avoidant shuts down. They deactivate. They turn cold. Their empathy turns off. They discard you. Out of nowhere, they drop you like a rock, and they give you nothing but vague excuses as to why the relationship has to end. And you are blindsided, and you're wondering what it was that you did wrong or what the heck happened. Well, what happened is something signified that the relationship was no longer just a fantasy. It was no longer just infatuation. It was a real relationship with real commitment. Something triggered the fears, and it probably was the fact that things were going well. It may have been the fact that you were ring shopping together, or there was a positive pregnancy test, maybe a dream holiday or vacation, and emotional intimacy was building over the course of that trip. Or maybe a family member or a friend said to the avoidant, "Oh, you two will make a wonderful married couple," or "You two would have beautiful children together." And the avoidant gets overwhelmed with fear because now suddenly it clicks within them that this is no longer just a fantasy. Early in the relationship, it is the shared fantasy. It's a romance novel. It's a rom-com. It is a love story. The avoidant is swept up in the dopamine rush of the infatuation. They are feeling good, and they have all these feelings that they've suppressed and bottled up throughout their entire life, and they are laying it on hot and heavy onto you. They are love bombing you in most cases. Not all of them do, but most of them tend to love bomb. It's all these suppressed emotions coming out because it's safe to do so early in the relationship. The reason that it's safe is because the relationship isn't real yet. Emotional intimacy, emotional closeness has not built yet. So it is safe for the avoidant to be affectionate and to pour it on. But once the relationship is real, and a real relationship signifies emotional intimacy, the avoidant is paralyzed with fear, and they shut down, they bury their emotions, they no longer allow themselves to access their feelings for you, and they head for the hills because the relationship became unsafe. It became unsafe because the avoidant's fears of abandonment, rejection, and engulfment rose to the surface. This all stems from childhood emotional neglect, where the avoidant was emotionally neglected by their parents or caretakers. They were not nurtured and loved in the way that they needed as a child, and their feelings were routinely dismissed. So they learned to not be able to express themselves, and they also learned that the people you rely on for your emotional needs are going to reject you. They're going to abandon you. They're going to disappoint you and not be there for you. So when emotional intimacy is building in the relationship, which is always implied with a serious commitment that you have to be emotionally vulnerable and available for your partner, that triggers the avoidant fears. They go into fight, flight, or freeze mode. And avoidants, they do flight. They don't fight for the relationship, they flee it, because that's what they learned to do, avoid their problems, not to process emotions, not to cope with problems, not to handle problems, not to resolve problems, but rather to run from problems, to run from emotions, to stick their head in the sand and just pretend the problem doesn't exist, which is exactly why they run from relationships, because that gives them a sense of stress relief and it makes them feel safe again, because the avoidant feels emotionally unsafe in a relationship with a partner that is emotionally available and loving. healthy relationship behaviors are precisely what triggers avoidant fears in these cases. That's because they feel like they're not good enough for this person, that it's inevitable that the loving partner is going to figure out that the avoidant is not good enough, and they're going to reject and abandon the avoidant. And these fears all come to the surface when something indicates that the relationship is no longer just a fantasy, it is a real relationship, and that is scary as hell to an avoidant.